Florida State football has been around for over 120 years.
It's a long time.
I looked it up. The first couple of years of their existence, their football team was known just as the 11.
Okay.
Because obviously, never mind. They've been around for over 120 years, and yet they are still everything that is wrong with Gen Z and millennial young people. I'll explain. Don't worry. It is hilarious that Florida State wants to enter the transfer portal because the ACC can't offer them enough name, image, and likeness money. Now, I know that's not exactly, but it kind of is exactly, right? Yeah. That they want to leave the ACC and go to either the Big Ten or the SEC, which would be entering the transfer portal with their eyes on two other destinations that maybe they were recruited by at one point in time in the past. Just like players enter the transfer portal, maybe looking to go to a team that recruited them out of high school that they didn't end up attending. Now, why would they do this? It's because they're not getting enough money. Oh, you mean like the players that go into the transfer portal and say they're going to the highest bidder? The Hunter Dickinsons who went from Michigan to, where'd he end up, Kansas? Basketball player, 7-footer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The players that just jump and go to the biggest name, image, and likeness deal. Oh, that's exactly what Florida State wants to do.
Oh, you mean me doing what's best for me?
I thought only selfish young people that were raised in an era that had no loyalty and they didn't want to sit around and compete. They were afraid of competition. I thought that was the only reason to make those types of decisions. Now that Florida State is making a very similar decision, I have to ask, should we all demand that Congress take over the regulation of conference realignment and media conference payments to get a federal rule so every state and every team can be handled the exact same? That's what the college coaches want to do to prevent players from making the exact same decisions that Oregon and Washington just made. Oh, Oregon and Washington committed to the Pac-12. But they didn't think they could win in the Pac-12. They didn't think they'd get enough money in the Pac-12. They weren't happy in the Pac-12. So they entered into the transfer portal and then committed to the Big Ten. A blue blood. That sounds like something coaches should be irate about.
Yeah.
That sounds like something athletic directors should need Congress to get involved to stop that action. Right? Players, teams. What was it? Pat Narduzzi, the head coach of Pittsburgh, at the ACC kickoff, says there needs to be limits so the rich schools won't bully the small schools. Right? You have to limit how much name, image, and likeness a player can make. Well, how about this? How about we limit how much media rights a team could make so the rich conferences can't bully the small conferences?
Yeah.
Or how about this one? Put guidelines on how much money the teams can make in general. Guidelines. Guardrails is a term used a lot.
Yes, need the guardrails.
Guardrails for players when they make money because, you don't want them going back on their commitments. Except Florida State just made they still have 13 years left on their commitment. They're going back on it. Mm-hmm. Gosh, where do the players get it from? Should we put the money? This is my favorite one. That the name, image, and likeness money for players should go into a trust that they get upon graduation, or that they get into a trust that they can finally receive after taking a class on paying taxes and how to invest properly. So how about this? How about we take all of the media rights money that teams get and we put it in a trust until they prove to us that they know how to spend it effectively.
Let's do it.
They have to take a class on not writing such terrible contracts that you're going to fire a coach and have to pay them $50 million in buyout money. They have to take a class on how to not upset boosters. They have to take a class on maximizing game day revenue. And until then, you don't get to see your money. That's how we're treating the players because they make decisions like the ones that are being made by schools right now. Now, I'm not saying Florida State or Washington or Oregon shouldn't be allowed to do whatever they think is best for them as a school. Matter of fact, that's the opposite of what I'm saying. I can disagree with the execution, which I do. I don't think Florida State is going about it the best way for them. I don't think leaving the ACC is the best thing for them. But I completely defend their right to, in their own mind, make whatever decision they think is best for them. Or I defend their right to be wrong. I defend their right to make decisions that could one day come back to bite their program in the behind. I'm just saying, I hope we understand that the players that make decisions to change their situation aren't doing it because they're young, because they're Gen Z, because they I don't know, got participation trophies. Although I hate participation trophies. It's not because they don't want to work every time. It's not always because they don't want to work. It's not always because they're afraid of competition. It's not always because they're disloyal. Sometimes it just makes sense.
Yeah.
You may sit there and say, okay, now that Washington and Oregon are out of the Pac-12, it just makes sense for Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah to join the Big 12. Well, guess what I'd argue? A lot of times it just makes sense when a transfer quarterback transfers into a school for the guy that thought he was going to be the starter to just transfer out.
Yeah. Makes sense.
It just makes sense. They're doing it for the same reasons Florida State or this team or that team switch conferences. It's just so perfect, right? Florida State, I guarantee you, Florida State lost a transfer to somewhere else, and the player got a bunch of name, image, and likeness money, and Florida State said, this is everything that's wrong with college football today. And then they said, could we put ourselves in the transfer portal? I'm not getting enough media money. And they did not see the irony in that situation at all, despite the fact that it's right there on the open, right? It's just the most blatant bit of irony you've ever seen.
You know what's hypocritical about all this? We always hear from coaches, ADs, conference commissioners about doing what's best for the athletes, right? Do what's best for them. Do what's best. Do what's best. Do what's best.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, is there anything about, I know football's driving this conversation, but you have the entire athletic department to worry about, right? I'm sorry, are we just completely neglecting the fact that Oregon and Rutgers have to play each other in soccer now? I'm sorry, this legit cross country travel that's going to be happening for a lot of these young athletes now. It's like, oh, okay, so what about the health and well being of student athletes? I'm sorry, where's that in all of this? Because last time I checked, they're still not getting a cut of this.
The Tuesday night volleyball match,
yeah,
in Eugene, Oregon, for the Rutgers volleyball team is not set up for their success.
No.
Matter of fact, I need to look this up, but Rutgers to LA was almost the exact same distance as Piscataway, New Jersey, where Rutgers is, to Reykjavik, Iceland.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, if my mental map of the United States, my knowledge of my off the top geography, I believe it's further from Rutgers to Eugene than it is from Rutgers to LA, which means Rutgers will have an in-conference matchup that is further from their campus than Reykjavik, Iceland. That's absurd. And do you know what else is interesting?
Tell me.
The term student athlete.
Oh, yeah.
How many times when you hear a commissioner speak, and we had it with Jim Phillips in the ACC at ACC Kickoff, do they reference their athletes as student athletes, right? And they want to put an emphasis on education. And the Big Ten is, right, they only admit AAU research universities, and you need to have an academic background of a certain standard to get into the Big Ten. What about the commutes is good for the students in the student-athlete equation? Nothing, right? I mean, I recall I played college football. Mm-hmm. You had to go to your teachers at the beginning of the semester and show them the note from the athletic department that said, on these days we have games on Saturdays and we're going to be traveling on Thursday and you're going to be out of class.
Likewise.
I don't think other than the national championship game, I don't think we ever left the Eastern time zone. And we had to go out there and get all these, miss all these classes, and some teachers would make us stink about it, and we're like, come campus policy, you have to let us.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, you trust me, I had to deal with a lot of professors on that.
Exactly. And I can't imagine when it's like, I have a track and field meet on Thursday. I am a sophomore shot put thrower. I'm going to have to miss class starting on Tuesday morning? Like we're flying out Monday night?
Yeah.
I mean, the student athlete part can be thrown out because the only justification is we'll have more money to fund our football program. That's why we're going to have to go through all of this. And for football, it doesn't seem as bad, right? If you only play on Saturdays and you only go to the West Coast twice a year, football's not bad. But what about basketball? What about baseball?
Oh, yeah.
Like, these are real commutes. I can't wrap my head around the I imagine in all of these meetings, right? They have all the chancellor and president meetings where the conference gets together. I assume prior to those or immediately after, the chancellors or the presidents go back to their university and they have their inner circle, right? They have their, deans and athletic directors and everybody involved. And I imagine there's some dean, there's some, director of student affairs or whatever the title is, raising their hand, just going, this is going to make everything really, really bad. And they're like, okay, heard. Athletic director, what do you say? This is going to make us a lot of money. I'm going to listen to you. All right, you're the justification I'm going to choose to believe here. You figure it out, right? You look at the academically focused person and go, this one's going to be tough. How much does it cost to get a tutor on the road? Because we're going to have the cash. More support staff, more academic staff for the athletes.